Think about the last hour of your life. Not in the abstract sense, literally, or the last 60 minutes. What did you do with it? Hey, most people, if they are being honest, cannot fully account for it. It slipped somewhere between a screen, a half-formed plan, and the comfortable certainty that there was more time coming. There always seems to be more time coming. This is the most dangerous lie a human being can tell themselves, and a Roman philosopher named Seneca identified it with terrifying precision 2,000 years before the smartphone, the endless scroll, or the autoplay. He did not call it laziness. He did not call it procrastination. He called it squandering your life. Lucius Annius Seneca was born around 4 BC in the Roman province of Hispania. By the height of his power, he was one of the wealthiest men in the empire. He was personal tutor and advisor to the Emperor Nero. He owned multiple villas. He commanded influence most people in history could never reach. He was also, by his own admission, terrified. Not of Nero, though he had every reason to be. Not of death, though it would eventually come for him at Nero's command. He was terrified of something quieter and more universal. The way time was being taken from him, not by enemies, not by the empire, by the daily accumulation of a life half-lived. In 49 AD, Seneca wrote a short essay to his father-in-law, a man named Paulinus. We know it today as On the Shortness of Life, and in it, Seneca made an argument that has cut through every era it has been read in, including this one. Life is not short. We make it short. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. The difference between those two sentences is the difference between a victim and a person who has finally seen the truth. There is a sentence that has derailed more human lives than almost anything else. When things settle down, I'll start. When I have more money, when the kids are older, when work calms down, when I feel ready. Seneca had a phrase for this. Dum differtur vita, transcurrit, while we are postponing. Life is passing. He did not need neuroscience to understand what researchers now call bit-temporal discounting, the documented human tendency to consistently undervalue the future and treat the person you will become as a stranger you feel no obligation toward. The version of yourself you imagine stepping into when things settle down is not you. It is a placeholder your mind invented so that the real you, right now, does not have to do anything uncomfortable today. Seneca watched this happen in everyone around him, including himself. He watched men spend 30 years building a fortune they planned to enjoy in retirement, only to discover that the life they were saving for had already passed them by. He watched men defer love, defer meaning, defer the actual substance of their existence, not because they didn't value it, but because they had built an elaborate internal story in which real living was always just around the corner. He called these people the preoccupied, always busy, never present, always preparing to live, never living. The cruelest part is that they would never feel the moment it became too late. It does not announce itself, it simply completes. Here is where Seneca makes his most precise and most uncomfortable distinction. He did not argue against being busy. He argued against being busy with the wrong things. People are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful of the one thing in which it is right to be stingy. Look at an average day, honestly. A phone checked before the eyes are fully open. Content consumed from strangers for the vague purpose of entertainment. Meetings that could have been a single message. Scrolling through the curated highlight reels of other people's lives while feeling the quiet erosion of satisfaction in your own. This is not living. Seneca would say it barely qualifies as existing. Modern psychology has a name for what happens to people who build their time around passive consumption and external stimulation. Hedonic adaptation, the pleasure plateau. The brain adjusts to each new source of input, demands more, and delivers less in return. You need more stimulation to feel the same emptiness. What Seneca called occupation without purpose, psychology now calls a life with no intrinsic reward structure. And the research confirms what he already knew. People who spend their time on things that feel urgent but carry no real meaning report at the end of their lives, not regret about specific choices. They report the feeling that something enormous was wasted. Not a day, not a year, but the whole thing. Here is where Seneca lands, with the full weight of a man who has been close to power, close to death, and has had time to see both with complete clarity. Omnia lucili aliena sunt tempus tantum nostrum est. Everything is alien to us, Lucilius. Time alone is ours. Not your money, not your status, not your reputation, not your plans. The moment any of these things existed in the world, they became subject to forces outside your control. Markets, other people, the unpredictable behavior of an emperor. But this moment, right now, while you are reading or listening or thinking, this belongs to you in a way that nothing else in your life ever will. Seneca's prescription is not a productivity system. He did not offer a morning routine. What he offered was more demanding than any of that. He offered a reorientation. Stop treating your remaining time as a bank account with unlimited deposits. You do not know when the withdrawals stop. You do not know if there is a next hour. The people Seneca admired, the ones he held up as having truly inhabited their lives, were not extraordinary in talent. They were extraordinary in one thing alone: their refusal to defer. They made something today. They loved something today. They chose something today, not tomorrow. Today. Seneca died in 65 AD by Nero's order, in the final years of a life he had spent preparing for exactly this kind of ending. By the accounts that survived, he met it without panic. He had spent decades sitting with this knowledge. He had not been surprised by it. Most of us will not have that preparation. Most of us will arrive at the recognition that time is almost gone before we expected it, in a moment that feels entirely too ordinary for what it is. The question Seneca leaves us with is not complicated. It does not require a philosophy degree or a dramatic life change. It requires one honest answer. If you knew this was the last stretch of normal days, the last period of ordinary, unremarkable time before something changed everything, what would you stop waiting to do? Whatever just came to mind. That is where you start, not when things settle down. How?